Okay, hello and welcome. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com, and we are here for a new session all about Microsoft Dynamics projects, relationships between customers and partners, and project success. Today, I am happy to welcome a new speaker for us. He is Norman Carmichael. He's the VP of Industry Solutions at Columbus. And as we get started, please know that you can use the Q&A block or the chat that you'll see on the right side of the webcast session here to ask your questions. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome Norman.
Hello. Thank you very much for joining. Today I'm going to cover the topic of 5 ways your Dynamics project keeps your partner up at night. Hopefully that's a interesting topic for you guys here. It looks like we've got a decent amount of people coming online, so definitely looking forward to presenting this. Let me give you a little bit of background about myself. So I'm currently the VP of Industry Solutions here at Columbus. I have over 25 years of experience on the user side. I was done a little bit of everything from supply chain roles within various manufacturing distribution companies up to the last 2 roles I had were as VP of operations at different manufacturing companies here in the U.S. I've spent the last 4 years at Columbus. The first 3 years I was leading our manufacturing practice from 2011 until the end of 2013, and I've taken on the role here now of looking over all of our practices from a solution standpoint. I'm an active member and volunteer with APIX. I'm a past president of the San Diego chapter, San Diego, California chapter of APIX, and spent 2 years on the International Board of Directors in 2012-2013. So very much about progressing the industry and helping drive improvements in supply chain and manufacturing as one of my key focuses. So now we'll get into kind of why we're here, and what is it that keeps us, what keeps your partner worried? What are the things that we're concerned about as we enter a project with you, and also talk a little bit about how we can mitigate some of those things, because it wouldn't be fun for me just to tell you what we were concerned about. I'd like to at least talk about also how we can help make improvements. You can see the list here. There's really 5 items that we consider to be concerns, at least when I look at it and my team looks at it here. We look at these 5 items as kind of really key things to focus on. The first is the whole concept of what's the strategy, what's the goal? Why are we here? What's the overarching driving factor? Is there a reason? If we have that reason, why are we making sure we're addressing the reason with the implementation? That's something I'll talk about here in a few minutes when I get into more the depth. Second one is scope. Scope's a buzzword we all use, but it really comes down to how do we use scope and how do we manage to it and how do we align to it? And really, are we on the same page when we talk about what is in scope? Third item is this concept of defined business processes. And my thought I usually come into when we're talking to a prospect and starting a project is, do you have them and do you see value in them? Is this something you want to have? Some companies, live and die by, tightly defined processes, and other ones see a competitive advantage and not. It's good for us to know kind of where you sit, and we're big believers in that business process piece is really key to how you manage an implementation. So the more definition you can and want to put around it, the better off you're going to be. Change management, in my opinion, is one of the most crucial portions of an implementation, and it's the one that I think a lot of people, understand and talk about, but always don't try to address. We're making changes to people's lives, even if they're for the better. There's still change, and how do we make sure we account for that and work on that during the implementation to ensure that is not an issue that we have to deal with. Okay? And the last one is a little more tactical, but it's something I wanted to make sure we address is testing. And my comment at a high level before we get into the detail behind it is, what I worry about is, are you willing to put in the effort to truly test the system? And I say that in that, the consultants, we do a lot of testing, but when you test your own stuff and you test the stuff you're used to, I really care more about you as the user. Have you tested it, and are you comfortable with how it works and getting to the solution you want to have? And I'll talk about that more in slides later on, kind of why I think that's important here. And really, those 5 things we talk about, and there's always other little ones out there, but these are the 5 top ones in my mind. It's, why am I concerned? Well, I'm concerned because of three things. One is if these things aren't under control, we're dealing with risk. And, the reason consulting firms like Columbus, the reason we go off and really work on a methodology and bring tools to the table to help you out is we're trying to minimize risk. We're trying to minimize risk for you, and we're trying to minimize risk for ourselves. So if we don't have alignment on these 5 items, there's a risk out there that we haven't really addressed. So that's something I always really want to make sure we're covering. And tied to that risk is really the next 2, which is the work effort and customer satisfaction. We've estimated a project for you based on certain assumptions. And that's just the reality of how all of us work in the partner community. We look at the project, we look at what you want, we determine our assumptions, and we give you an estimate. If we're off significantly in these areas, our assumptions are no longer valid. So that now can change the work effort, maybe for us and also maybe for you. And neither one of those is something we're looking for. And the last one, those 2 things really tie to customer satisfaction. At the end of the day, we want to make you happy. That's what we're trying to do. And the more variation and change that happens because of these areas not being addressed, and the more risk we put on the project, and the more the work effort's shifting, that's a tougher one to try to get to. So that's really what we're trying to do here from these 5 areas. So one thing I did want to say was anytime during this presentation, if you've got a question, go ahead and type it in the box, and I'll be notified of the question, and we can try to address it a little more real time, because I do want to try to answer any concerns you may have as we get through this. Okay? So I'm going to talk just a little bit about risk here for a second, and really go a little deeper into why some of these things are really driving high risk practices. So I talked about strategy and goals, and really the ERP is not considered strategic. To me, the real risk is you're not going to get the return you want on what is a high investment. Putting in a tier 1 software package, even if it's on a smaller scale, is still a high investment for whatever company's doing it. And the goal is not to give you a truncated or limited set of returns, or a return much later than you wanted. And that can happen if we haven't aligned what we're doing to your strategy. And that's something that we really have to be focused on. The next one is really, if you're focusing on technology versus focusing on business requirements, what your outcome may be is that you have a solution that doesn't fit the business model or processes. And this is what I go back, in my years and years of doing this, and as a user, I've put in 6 different ERP systems at companies I've worked for. It goes back to the concept of, we used to do in the 90s, which, ERP was an IT project, and IT drove the project, got it done, and then, all users were dissatisfied and unhappy. And we need to make sure we're not focusing on technology. Technology is an enabler, it's a key portion of this, but the focus should be on business and business requirements. The other risk we have here is that we don't really have a complete understanding of the business processes. If either side, if we're not speaking the same language, we have risk. And if we end up not understanding how we got there, and we're really looking back at the old system and looking at exactly how we do it today, and we don't understand it from a flow standpoint, the risk you have is we put in AX, and I kind of call it, you put a new wrapper on an old system. At the end of the day, you're still doing things the way you did them before. You're not leveraging the efficiencies, and you're not improving your return on investment by truly thinking about your implementation from a business process standpoint, not just fields and forms. Okay? The other risk is that you've always got the variables of schedule, cost and quality, and if you're focused on schedule only, and you're rushing to get results, and you're trying to do it as fast as possible, and you're just moving ahead without looking at all the details, you've got a risk that you end up with a system that doesn't make your customers happy. And the customers are the users in the company. And we got to make sure when we do these implementations that we're going at the right pace, we're getting there as quick as we can, but we're doing a thorough job in ensuring that we've done a good transfer of knowledge from the partner to the core team to the end user, and we've given them the tools they need to be successful in making that happen. The last one is shortcuts in training and user familiarization. This happens, this happens more often than we want to see, in that, as you're going through the methodology and as you get near the end, this is an ERP implementation is a slow baton handoff. And if you're giving over that baton and the baton's not being taken on the other side, if we're not doing enough in-depth training at the end user level and getting them familiar with it in terms of business process, the risk is it may take longer or it may never complete if you get to the end and there's not a comfort level to throw the switch. So those are 5 things that kind of led me to the categories we have, which I'll now talk about in a little more depth on how we can hopefully talk about how it's possible to maybe think a little differently as you implement AX or any ERP system and try to minimize these risks. Okay. So first one is strategies and goals. Why are we here? Why are we doing this project? What brought us together? Okay. And the first thing you got to think about is this project done for a strategic versus a non-strategic reason, or is the approach strategic versus non-strategic? Because the first thing we want to know is this a good fit? If we've worked with you to sell you AX, I'm a big believer that we need to feel comfortable that what we're selling you is something you can use and it's a good fit for your business. It brings a tool set to you that allows you to do your jobs better. Okay. And to me, if we don't understand the strategic nature of your business and what you're trying to do, and we haven't talked to you at that level, and we haven't really tried to understand who and what your company's all about, I think we're at risk for putting in a system that doesn't really fit. And if it doesn't really fit, then your users will start to see that, and cracks will start to appear in AX, from a usability standpoint, because we've shoehorned something in. And that's not to say that it's not possible to do it correctly, or we can't course correct, but it is around really understanding why you're heading in the direction you're heading, where your business is going, who your customers are, what their needs are, so that we're addressing it from that viewpoint. And the key is we've got to make sure users adopt systems. If a user doesn't adopt the system, that's a showstopper for these types of systems. And we really need to connect that strategy to goals, measurable goals within your business, so we can try to see, are we meeting that? Are we building a system within? Does the solution give you the capabilities you need to get there? And those are critical things we need to be looking at. And the last piece is that, since if we've talked to you about strategy and we know your strategy and we know your goals, that really should be the cornerstone for the project. We should be constantly looking back to that and addressing, are we on track to help you further your strategic focus? And that's really something that, these are big enough systems that they need to be thought of in that way. So here's a quote. I try to get a quote for each of my sections here. It was a lot of fun finding these guys here, but this is one I really like. Is success doesn't necessarily come from breakthrough innovations, but from flawless execution. A great strategy alone won't win the game or the battle. The win comes from basic blocking and tackling. And the reason I like this is, putting it, the strategy is great, and the strategy is what we need to drive to, and the strategy is where you're going to take your business. I see the ERP system as that blocking and tackling. So it's getting that thing aligned and getting it to where we can successfully manage and execute the daily work to meet that strategy is the key. And like I said, if we haven't talked about that or thought about that, we could put a system in that is misaligned to that. So we need to have alignment between the system and the strategy. And we need to be able to measure this if the solution is aligned along the way. And we need to look at it from a process basis, not a field and form basis. So, and the nice part about that, if we're looking at it that way, we can use that information to steer the project, because everyone who's been involved in a project knows there's always exceptions. So, from our methodology, from a sure-step standpoint, if we finish the analysis and design phase and we come up with some things that were not considered to be in the scope or some additional work that may need to be done, I'm a big believer that, we all work for somebody and we all have to go to approval for somebody usually at that stage. And we need to be able to present it to them in a way that makes sense. Most companies, when you get into having to change the budget on a project, you're taking that request up to a CFO or even a CEO, and they want to talk about how it meets strategic initiatives. And what I'm going to show you here in a second is kind of how we approach it to try to do that. Because at the end of the day, we have to know where a process is valuable to you and your stakeholders versus where it's a nice to have. And I feel it's our job to help try to point that out to you as we go through the project so that we can minimize scope creep and maximize value. Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is just a concept of, we tend to look at things more from a process standpoint than a system standpoint, from a menu item standpoint. So this is a quick example of just kind of showing what I call a list of processes or a hierarchy of processes within an area around. I just took a snapshot here of developing products. And what I'm trying to show here is that we've got this list down the left-hand side that talks about developing products, defining an item, defining item information for a material item. Let's say there's your first one. You'll see that it's got these little places to kind of mark it against a strategic goal. So in this situation, we worked with the customer, we talked to the customer, and we say, what are you really trying to do here? Well, they're trying to improve customer satisfaction. They're trying to reduce operating costs. They're trying to get new products out faster, and they're trying to reduce working capital. So those are the things they came to us and said that those are key things from a strategic goal. To meet our strategy, these are goals we need to try to achieve with this project. So as we engage, we try to look at, how can we map these processes that we believe are valuable processes within AX? How do those have an impact on those goals? So if you look down below, I'm going to click here, this section right here, which is this define a formula for a subcontract manufactured item. We did the analysis and said, well, it plays in three areas. It plays in reducing costs, introducing new products faster, and reducing working capital if we've set the item up right. Okay, so now when we're here, when we're talking with the customer, we're talking about, how this process relates to a strategic nature and how it applies. So if I'm speaking with them and this is the process we use to, it's kind of our starting point for how AX should be used in their industry, and they feel they need to deviate from it, well, the nice part is if I go back and I look at my list here, this is a highly strategic process to them. So this is a case where I may want to listen to them more. I may want to extend the conversation and be more willing to maybe make a modification to a system because if this process is a key driver and they've got maybe, industry or customer specific actions that we should be listening to, we should listen to those. The one I always bring up is the other example is if I have a process for how to receive a product, generally those processes, that tactical process around receiving, doesn't drive a lot of value from a strategic goal standpoint. So we tend to want to push back. If we're sitting in a workshop and we've got, a client that wants to highly modify how receipts are done, we want to challenge that because we may say, while it may be how you did business, before, it's not, it's not strategically valuable. So if you're going to have to go take this to your management, you need to understand that this doesn't really bring value to your end customer. So that's really what, the thought process here is around. If you're looking at it from a strategy and goal perspective and you're mapping that to the processes that your business is going to use, it makes it a lot easier during the project to make some of those decisions around, should we modify process? Should we modify system? Should we accept, standard AX? Should we modify AX? Those are the kind of things we should be looking at, and like I said, always tying it back to strategy. So the challenge around strategies is how do we stay focused on what's important to the company? And our belief is if you map your strategy and business goals to your design, you're able to elevate that conversation. You're able to keep people, focused on what's really important to your business because, these are, like I said, these are expensive projects. And the goal is to bring the best value we can to that project. And the way I see to do that is to focus on the areas that are very important to you. So, okay. So my next topic was scope. And my concern here is have we truly aligned scope to expectations? And that's an interesting, conversation because that is, if you talk to most project managers, scope creep and scope change is the reason why we have, overruns and issues. It's the primary reason. So scope management is really it's critical. But the issue I see is that we need to make sure that the project scope is really understood and respected from the beginning. Because as this is a people-to-people business as we do these implementations, and reality is, we just want to make you happy. Our consultants are working with you guys day to day. They want to make you happy. So, it's real easy to start letting scope drift a little bit because, we're working side by side, and you've asked for something, and it doesn't seem like it's that big a deal. But we still need to have everybody on the same page, because those little drifts in scope may affect other project objectives and may come back to bite us later. So, it's really something we need to stay focused on and stay very attentive to. The other piece that's really critical here is what I call, I mentioned business. We really should be thinking about scope in terms of business processes, not the application. In my mind, application scope is just a challenge in itself. You're thinking about, if you think about business process instead of thinking about the menu you look at in AX and that if I'm going to implement one little item or another little item, you're better to think about the business process I'm going to implement and then how that impacts AX, because the application is very far-reaching now. AX has moved significantly over the last 10 years, and you've got the ability to do almost anything in that system now. So back in the good old days, if you go back to 2009 or before, we used to have an ability to somewhat control scope at the very front end because the product was sold modularly, and we could just not sell you something. And you wouldn't want to buy it because you weren't sure you were going to use it, and we would sell you that module or not include that module. Well, now you get everything. So it's a lot harder for us to manage application scope, especially when as you've gotten into the project, because there could be valid reasons why you want to use it if you've had a chance to play with it, but it may not be a good strategic reason to use it right now. And that kind of goes back to the earlier point about if you know your strategy and you know your goal, it's easier to manage it from a business process standpoint. Okay. So I'll let you guys kind of digest this little slide here. And, this is, a funny example I found here, the Dilbert example, which is kind of a day in the life of the consultant. We're always asked to do little things and we do it. And that's where you end up with a lot of personalizations and things that may be nice, but may not be required. And my comment, kind of to scope is it's really everyone's responsibility to manage scope. It's not just the PM's responsibility. Project managers have ownership over making sure we keep it under control, but everyone's got to do that. And everyone's got to look at how we use scope to remove unnecessary work from the project, because unnecessary work creates issues around, like we talked about before, it can create problems. It can create, dissatisfaction with budget control and timeline control and all those kind of things. Okay. So here's my next quote, and I think this is a good one. It comes back to scope. Is having a copy of MS Project makes you a project manager to the same extent that a copy of MS Word makes you an author. And this is a past board member from the PMI group, the Project Management Institute group, and at the end of the day, I think, everybody needs to be aligned that the goal is to get the project done on time and on budget. And it really is key that scope management is a holistic concern of the project, not just a project manager or a management's concern. So we all should be thinking about, as we do things, what is the impact on timeline? What's the impact on cost? And, business process owners, the people in the project who are going to make decisions, have to have a consistent, clear understanding of what's in scope. And all decisions and approval should be made with scope in mind. It's really critical. Okay. So I did want to talk a little bit about when we talked about scope as far as being feature-based or process-based versus feature-based. We use a tool to kind of track and it's called Rapid Value that we use to track processes. And we build up these hierarchies to look at what's in scope and what's out of scope during the project. So we keep all this stuff kind of tightly nested inside of AX. And you can see here, based on these little highlights here, here's 2 items that within the initial discussion of the project that have been deemed out of scope. We're not going to deal with catch weight on this item, and we're not going to do e-commerce with our customers. That's an easier discussion, I think, when you're talking to business people, because they can understand what the impact of that is versus if I'm talking to them, good example, good old product builder. If I say it's product builder's in scope or not in scope, that may or may not be true. And I'm actually, since I said back to my comment earlier, since we sell you the whole system and we give you capabilities, and more of AX is now intertwined and you've got a lot more things you can do, it's better to manage how you implement it and how you get things done by looking at the business processes than it is to try to truly truncate at the application level. Because there's a lot of neat and valuable things you may want to use a tiny sliver of, but that sliver should be determined and managed based on the process you're trying to get to. Okay. So the challenge with scope is, we've got to find a way to maintain proper scope within the realm of what is strategically valued and agreed upon by stakeholders. And the reason I say that is that we have to have the ability to answer the scope question correctly. It's not just about whether the person wants it or doesn't want it. It's not about whether the team thinks it's the right thing to do. It's, does it bring value? There's not a problem with letting scope drift a little bit if it's strategically valuable and agreed upon by the stakeholders. And that's what we have to work on all the time. So the key to that, in my opinion, is that we talk about it in terms of business process, not software elements, because scope change will change your project budget more than likely. You need to get approval. You need to speak in the language that your management speaks in. And coming from my background, most of it being on the operations management side, it's a tough sell when you're trying to sell your CEO on why you need product builder. It's an easier sell when you talk about why you need to have configured orders to meet the demand of customer X, Y, and Z. And I know product builder is a bad example because it's deprecated, but I put it out there anyway because it was one I had figured would generally be out of scope in most projects that we do. But so that's really what this comes down to, is really getting scope looked at from a business process standpoint, to me, is the best way to mitigate your scope concerns. Okay. So define business processes. And this is, I look at this as, do you know where you are or where you want to be? And that's really a critical piece of the puzzle, in my opinion, is where, what are we doing? So the first thing when you look at starting an implementation, we look and see what's your process? Are you following them? Where are you coming from? We also try to make an assessment: is this going to be information that's hard to get a hold of? The other part of this that is a realistic part is, did we really during the sales cycle we get to learn what you tell us. We don't really learn everything, and trying to get to the depth that we're going to get to in the implementation is very difficult in the sales cycle. So there's always that question of, do we have access to enough information, and are you procedural enough that it will make it easy for us to take those processes and move the ball forward in the implementation. It's also another, it's another key indicator of really how do you value process, and do you see these processes as kind of a valuable piece of your corporate culture, because we need to know that too. And are you willing to make changes to those processes? Because ERP is an opportunity for change. You're putting in a system that's hopefully a step up or a improvement from the system you had before, or then there's a question of why you're doing it. But if you're doing that, we need to find a way to leverage the improvements that are in the technology, the improvements in the software, the additional capability, and we want to find a way to get you to where we believe AX can do a better job. And are you willing to make those changes? So processes, I look at that risk, and the things that kind of worry us is, how do you do processes today? How married are you to those processes? How much are you, a believer in changing processes and making improvements? And a good example is you wouldn't believe how many times we go into an implementation, and as we're getting into a workshop, somebody brings a screen sample of their current system in and starts to have that as this talking point for the discussion. They're looking to try to recreate this form. We're a big believer in business process management really here, and looking at it differently and trying to take that discussion when we get into processes in a way, temporarily away from the system, talk about what the goals and the processes and how you do it, and align things, and then map it back to the system with some pre-configured, setup we have. So we definitely see a much higher value proposition for you to be looking at this from a business process standpoint than from trying to just hit the features. Okay. So Jack Welch, said, an organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. And the reason I put that up here is that, that part of the goal of going to AX or any other ERP system when you're making that change is hopefully to learn new best practices, learn commonality and standardization of the way things are done compared to the system you had before that allow you to be better. But there's a lot of things we have to go through and digest and figure out before we can determine exactly what those processes are. So you really need a structured approach to how you manage the information around your processes and your project to make sure we're getting the right level of coverage to deploy the solution correctly, okay? So, generally what we're looking for is we need to have the ability to have some kind of a repository where we're looking at flowcharts, we're looking at roles and how those roles affect the flowcharts, we're looking at it, how it relates to what the project's got to get done. Hopefully we have some success criteria lined up to your strategy and your goals. We're tying it all back to schedules, and it really comes back to kind of pulling all that together based on the methodology. SureStep does a good job of getting us to this point. We believe you need some additional, processes and tools within the implementation to take you to the next level. And that's why I said we're really a big believer in the whole business process modeling and business process management approach. And that's the approach we try to take when we get into working on the implementations to hopefully create that more robust repository of information, okay? So I'm going to show you just kind of at a high level from our rapid value tool, just the concept of what I call a process hierarchy. And I'm really just going to focus more, when I go back to that slide earlier, I talked about all the different things. I'm really going to focus on process and roles for a second because, when we're working on a project, we're doing a project that has impact on people, and people fill roles, and those roles go into processes. So we're very big believers that you've got to get alignment there and get the people on board to make sure we have a successful launch of the application. So the first animation, I'm showing this first slide I'm showing you here is really a high-level hierarchy. It talks about developing products, planning your supply chain, selling products, executing, all the things you would normally see in a process hierarchy. But if I take that a level deeper, I've now got more definitions. So define items, I've got define an item for, information for material item. I've got, prepare to produce down in the next section. I've got define a bill of materials. And you can see it gets more robust. But the area we want to talk to the team with as we get into an implementation, if I take a look at like define item information for a material item, I want to talk to you about this process. And I want to talk to you at the right level, and I want to talk to the right people. So here's a process we kind of put together for defining item information for a material item or a stocked item. And it has some different, it's a flow chart that talks about how AX and manual steps are impacted. And it ties out to the roles of the people who do the job. So the nice part about this is as I'm looking at this and as I can tailor and modify this, I want to be having discussions with the product designer or the person who fills that role from an AX perspective, or the people that fill that role, if it's multiple people or if we have to split it apart. I want to be having those discussions with them. And what we've tried to do is take all this graphical information and things we look at and try to make it more data so we can kind of slice and dice it, so we can then, if I take a look at that hierarchy I had before, but I look at it differently, I may look at the developed product section more from who does what. So you'll see I've got or if I'm having a workshop around developing product, I want to have the engineering manager involved because they've got a piece of defining item information. I want to have the product designer involved with these 7 process reviews here. I want to have the purchase agent involved, HR involved, so on and so on. So we're able to, we're taking kind of a different look at this. If I look at this more from how the processes come together, I see this nice, flow of procedural things have to happen. But I don't want to forget about the people, because I want to talk to the people about how this job happens and the business process owners where these people report, so that we're addressing all the business concerns. And that's really, to me, the critical part when we talk about business process modeling. It's not just about get a flow chart put together and figure out how the transactions happen in AX. It's really about interfacing with these people early and often and giving them visibility to the processes that impact them so that we can be more successful. Okay. So the challenge back to whole business processes, I think we're all in need of a clear direction and guidance to ensure that business processes provide a competitive advantage. And that was kind of my summary of what's the reason we're looking at this? Well, we're looking at putting in a new system for you, and we're looking at helping you because hopefully this is meeting your strategic goals, and hopefully those goals are driving you to have a competitive advantage in your market. So our belief is if we use business process management, use that kind of approach to managing how we fulfill a solution, and we're working with the right people who know those roles, who know that industry, who know what they have to do to please their customer, we're going to get a better solution than if we're truly just looking at it from a application perspective. So that's really a critical part there, is we need to make sure that the flow, that the clearly defined processes, give you that understanding and give you a more robust solution. We also try to look beyond just AX. We try to look at the manual steps you may or may not want to do, and we also try to model those steps, because like I said, it's not just an AX solution. Hopefully it's a business solution. That business solution gives you enough of a robust solution to please your customers. So the next thing here is change. And the question that I kind of ask is, have you embraced change, and are we equipped to help you? Because it really is it's a double-sided thing here. It's not just your team, it's how our team interacts with your team to help you move everything forward from a change management perspective, okay? So, first question is your company ready to embrace change? You have to remember that we're always going to have a major impact on people when we do an ERP project. It's a decent, it's a decent change for what they do day to day. A lot of people nowadays, the jobs have moved more and more to be very system oriented, and people are on those computers all day long, and you're changing their life. And we've got to make sure we understand what it takes to do that. So how you address this is really crucial. Do you have tools in place to help manage it? Are you communicating? Do you have a communication plan in advance? Are you looking at these things? And how can we work together to make that happen? Because we're there side by side with your team. We become, we feel we become, entrenched in this process, and hopefully we form good bonds and good relationships, and we want to be a part of helping, coach and mentor and manage through the process. And the implementation methodology always needs to be thinking about the concept of how things might change for people. Okay, because my fear, or what I've seen in the past, even on the user side and even here on the consulting side, if your employees are afraid of the system or afraid to to work on this project, it's going to get really difficult. So if we have people who are embarking on this in fear, that can be a real challenge from an implementation standpoint. It can have a significant impact on timeline and budget and cost and morale and all kinds of things. So it really comes down to, having good communication, having, really strong management buy-in, enlisting our help as much as you can. Are you willing to accept our help in this process? Can we be another, sounding board for your people? Can we help? It really, most of it will fall on you. We can provide guidance. We can provide some approaches. We can provide some backup. But it really comes down to, from a managerial standpoint, getting everything in place, okay? But one key thing that, I'll bring this next quote up here is, this is something we have to live with. Change is inevitable. The rate of change is not going to slow down anytime soon. If anything, competition in most industries will probably speed up even more in the next few decades. So the concept of changing systems, changing processes, being more adept and more agile, that's not going away. and it's not going away even in terms of, the ERP is one part. You really need to have a good concept for change overall for your business. And I think those companies that have that already in their culture do a good job of managing expectations through the implementation. So I kind of go back to how do we make this easier? How do we help? And I talk about we can be involved, and we can mentor, and we can help keep the message going. But another way we can really help is to help make sure we're doing a very good job of documenting this entire project in detail as we go through it. And the way but it's detailed, but it's got to be broken up into the language and spelled out in the language that the people deal with. So, I'm not talking about the technical write-ups and the documents for the developers and the things we're using to really work with the IT team. It goes back to looking at, at processes and roles, like I showed earlier, versus fields and forms. We've got to make the conversation about business and how it impacts people at a role level. And we've got to do that early and often, because that really is the key, is getting people involved, getting them to buy in, getting their feedback, okay? One other thing we've started to investigate here, and it's still new on our side, but one of the things we're looking at is, the whole concept of social interaction. We have some ways today within SharePoint and other things to do during a project, but we're actually experimenting, just because we think this is a real critical area. We're experimenting with some thoughts and concepts around almost, thinking, Facebook-like in how we approach some of the discussions and things that go on within business processes. And it's something we'll be embarking. I'm not ready to lay out too much yet, because it's still kind of a thought and development, but we are looking at trying to think about how we can do things differently to engage people at the right level during a project and bring them in, get them involved so that they're more eager to accept change. So, and I think, we have that with SharePoint today with lists and discussion groups and things like that, and we're looking at trying to take that to the next level because we think there's lots of value. So that's an area that you should be, that's an area to look at, is how do you engage the employees, and especially the key employees that you're going to have an impact on. How do you make sure they're comfortable? Okay. So here's an example of kind of how we, just talking about elevating the discussion a little bit. If we're looking at a process like this, okay, where we talk about, we've defined a process, we've documented it, we've talked about who's involved. The real goal within the implementation, and something we try to do, is we try to create living documents and documents that continue, and we do leverage our rapid value tool to try to input information that can then create and present things to the people that help explain what the impact is on their process a little better than maybe just a Visio diagram shows. So here you have a Visio diagram that shows here's what the process is. But reality is, what I want to do is I want to talk to them in a language and talk about, I want to have some verbiage in here that describes the impact on the role, talks about what they have to do in whatever language you need to put it in, and then marries that up to, the fields and forms of the system to tie that all together. And that, to me, is the best way to present that. Task Recorder and AX does a great job. It gives you that kind of field and form look and feel. You really want to put some additional content around that, around how that impacts from a business process standpoint, so that not only are you having that conversation with your team as how they're going to do the keystrokes, but you talk to them about how they're going to do their daily tasks. Okay. So that's what we really try to drive to. And it really, to me, it takes the employee on the journey from business process to execution inside AX. So the challenge on change is really organizational change management is a critical component to implementation success. And the way to solve that really is that communicate early and often, and the impacts on the new systems and the processes we'll have. So we need to make sure we let them know what's going to impact them. How is it going to how is this new system and how are these processes going to change their life, hopefully for the better, and get that out in front of them as fast as possible. You've got a high level of touch points with people and process in an implementation, and communication is really the key. Partners need to bring tools and processes to make that a success. It really is the critical point here. Last one is testing. and this is the one I said that, when you look at how it kind of stands out, this is the one that seems very tactical, but, it's one that I worry about because I've seen it on both sides of the table here. Have we really tested the solution? That's kind of my question I ask is, when we get into an implementation is how do we know we tested it? So it's really trying to figure out, is the solution working as advertised? Did we do a good job of understanding you? Did your team understand what we were doing and understand how to test it? Did we come up with good business cases and something I call the happy path? I really don't care about the happy path. The happy path is easy. It's the non-happy path I care about, and, making sure we're, looking for proof. The real key here is that, consultants aren't perfect. We're not, we're bringing expertise in here, but this is a game. This is a two-way street of trying to understand what we were trying to do, and the solution's a translation from what we've been told, and then what the experiences are we have with the system. And at some point, this thing has to be aligned. We do conference room pilots, we do testing, we do all these things that we call the testing process to try to verify and validate that. And this is our chance to catch the things where there was a misalignment. We have many opportunities for what I call the telephone game to get in the way, because we're translating these, we talk, business process owner to functional consultant talks about the business process and writes it up, and it goes over to a technical person, and it goes over to a developer, and it comes back to possibly a technical person on the customer side, then it goes to an end user. And at the end of the day, did we really address the business issue? So, and are we consistent in how we solve the solution? So we need to make sure that we're very focused on not only planning and documenting the test, but truly doing the test and documenting the results and making sure we have a feedback loop for when things go awry. Because I don't think, those who have been through implementations or those who are going through implementations, unless you have a very, very, very simple, non-modified, straightforward system, and even then you'll still have issues, you almost can't complete a conference room pilot without having some level of requirements and issues that might pop up that you have to address. And that is really, how do you get that how do you manage that feedback loop, and how do you close out that is really critical to making sure you've done a successful job in testing and validating your system. So back to my question of, did you test it? It's a strange question, but it's a valid question, because that's a concern we always have, is, was the test really carried out correctly? Okay. So the last of my quotes here is that quality is an ally of schedule and cost, not their adversary. If we have to sacrifice quality to meet a schedule, it's because we're doing the job wrong from the very beginning. Okay. And I really like this quote, and I think that things like methodologies like SureStep and tools that we have like Rapid Value and other tools that are out there can definitely help. But you need to find a way to really balance that need for a test versus other constraints, but you can't give on test. That's not the area to give up on. What you need to do is find a different way to look at it, to leverage your previous work, to leverage the designs you've done, to leverage documentation you've done, to make it easier to do that test and to validate that test. Okay. And I'll show you an example. With the tool we actually have the ability to take those process flows and those documentations we've done, and we can create a test suite, which actually lets us go through and walk through that scenario and mark off if we've done the work correctly, and we actually record it inside of the database. So we have the ability to do that, and that's something we found was very valuable, because we used to do all that in Excel. And I think a lot of you have probably been through the Excel process of putting the script together and having all the stuff in Excel and trying to document and write it up. And it's good there, and it's something you can do, but we found that if we were doing all this work anyway, and we were building out the processes and the procedures, and we were doing the documentation early on, why not try to leverage that same data set and that same content and use it as the way to get to where we have to get to? So the key thing is we actually use the content we've created within our process flows and our documentation, just like I showed earlier, to generate a script. And that script is what you follow, and that script is what you record your results against. So you really need to find a way to map up the fact that you did the work, what flow it was, what business process you were covering, maybe what version or variety of it you were doing, and find a way to link all this together so that we have an integrated approach to solution testing. Okay. So the challenge for testing is that it tends to be an area that's shortcut most often, not for any malicious reasons, but due to lack of knowledge on the impact. To me, the solution is use tools and processes that allow you to properly plan, track, and execute the detailed testing of the system. And I'm a firm believer that most go-live problems that we run into and you run into and everyone runs into can always be traced back to a lack of testing. Some condition, something that somebody forgot to think about as a scenario that didn't get covered and wasn't documented, or people thought got covered, but it wasn't documented to a level that made everyone feel comfortable that the coverage was sufficient. So the other part about testing is, if you do it right, you have a structure to it, and you have documentation, it's another point for you to learn about the solution. The whole process of doing implementation is about consistent learning over the time horizon. So the more chance you have to get in, understand the system, and especially when I talk about business process and we talk about how we like to leverage our business processes to drive the testing, the more you're doing that, the more you're doing a reinforcement of how the system works for you within your structure, and hopefully it has more impact as you take that team through the project. And the last part is, back to the part that we need to execute on it, the project management team needs to know that the work was done. We need to have a place we can give objective evidence, and no matter how you do it, you've got to find a way to track that and provide evidence that that test in that scenario was finished. So now I'll get into my closing remarks here, and then I'll open up if there's any questions at the end. So, really, this is all about trying to make sure that, your partner has a way to help you out on these things. You need to find a way to address these concerns prior to start. The conversations at least need to have to be about these areas. It doesn't mean you have to have a locked down, very rigid structure to how it happens, but you have to have the conversations, and you have to understand the guidelines and kind of the grounding on how you got to this point, so that as you make decisions during the project, you have an understanding of what needs to be done. And I think all of that comes back, like I said, it's not about a rigid process, it's about having the partner and the customer aligned. So we're trying to solve all, this implementation is a team effort. We need to bring tools and methodologies to assist in the process, and you need to bring your business knowledge. And if we can tie up these 5 areas with that approach, I think we've got, any partner should be able to bring you lots of value. And we believe that, this is the way we try to approach it, and so far we think it's doing a good job for our customers and creating a high level of satisfaction. So at this point, I will open up to any questions. And even if you don't have a question now, or you want to reach out to me, I've put my email address out there. If you've got a follow-up question on this topic, or a general question in general, you've got contact information on here as well that you can reach out and ping us. So.
All right, and we do have a first question here. Just to remind everyone, you can use the Q&A block that you should see to the right of the slides to ask your questions. Remember the first one that came in, can you describe some tools you found helpful for the change management aspect of a project?
Yeah, and that's a hard one to me for a specific tool. A lot of that is around looking at really how you approach the communication. So what we've seen in a lot of cases for very successful projects, when HR has a seat at the table in the implementation, and HR can create a communication plan around it, that is the most helpful. It's not, it's not like I can't think of a magic tool unless you want to get into something like constant contact or some way to do automatic emails. It really is around, it's a managerial issue more than it is a tool issue, in my opinion. So I'm always very happy when I get into a session where the HR leader is a part of the team and a part of the process. So that would be my request, or I guess vote for that. So hopefully
all right. I had a question kind of going back to, and we'll make a last call for questions here. We'd love to hear from anyone else in the audience as well, as we get ready to, as we get near the top of the hour here. But, you mentioned people pulling out sort of processes or screenshots of the existing tools that they'll have. And you all, I think you might get a mix of people in any given organization, some who are looking for change moving forward, some who are just looking to replicate old programs. Do you have any guidance on how you manage sort of that mix of people, some who are looking to move forward, some who are resisting?
Yeah, I mean, what it really comes down to is you've got, it goes back to kind of that showing them value. Because, the reason why people are bringing their old system up generally is that they see lots of value in the way they apply themselves to that position, and to that screen, because that's their baby, and that's what they're used to, and that's what they need to survive. You've got to find a way to find those people in your organization early in the implementation. And a lot of times when we work with companies, they know that. They know who the 4 people are that are going to be highly resistant to change. And at least from my standpoint, my team standpoint, we try to look at those people and try to work closely with them to show them that there are capabilities and things that we're going to bring to them with this system that will hopefully elevate kind of their role. And I'm not saying they get promoted or whatever, but I'm saying elevate kind of the work they do and give them the ability to kind of get out of some of the mundane and get into more decision making. So it's a challenge because like I said, even good change is change, and good change can be scary, but it really is. I hate to harp back on it, but it goes back to that whole process of good communication from the management team, good support from the management team, and the ability for us all to kind of work with them to let them see that at the end of the day it's going to be okay.
Okay. We don't have any more questions in the queue, so we can start wrapping up here. Today's session has been recorded. And let me actually just look for one more question here. So we do have one more. In what form would you begin a conversation? Let me see if I can sort of paraphrase this one. What's the form for beginning the conversation with a partner in terms of documenting the business process?
Yeah, well, it's going to depend. I mean, to me, the best thing you want to do is try to find partners that have been there, done that a little bit in your industry, in my opinion, because you want to be able to bring. I mean, if we're talking about going to the 2B process, you want to bring background and knowledge and sharing from what they've seen in other businesses that are similar to the table. So in a perfect world, you'd love to have a partner that's kind of been there, done that with similar companies to you, and that can point to how the system works best for that unique business process. There's really 2 ways to look at it. Like I said, one way is to come in, like I said, with those kind of companies that have been there, done that, that are bringing you kind of pre-described, kind of a templated starting approach, which is one way. The other way is to really, it goes back to if you have good business processes already and you have things that you feel are going well for you, it can be to start the conversation more as the as-is to 2B migration and do more of what we call a functional requirements analysis prior to doing the workshopping on the 2B solution. And that's where you would sit down, with the functional consultant and the key users and the business process owners in those areas and really get an understanding of what your process is. The key to that step, though, is not just to replicate your old process into the new. It's to we're almost turning the table on the implementation. You're spending time there educating us on how you do business and what you need to do to make you and your customers successful. We need to find the highlights from there that are truly value-added steps that need to stay intact, and then we need to do a mapping exercise to map it to how AX functions. So I think it's really depending on which approach you're taking. Like I said, if you're coming from a system that isn't very well maintained and you don't have good business processes, I would say you want to find your industry experts to drive that. If you're coming from a highly regimented, documented system and you feel you have good business processes that take care of your customer, go through the functional requirement steps to determine how to get there.
All right. We do, in fact, appear to be at the end of our question queue now. I want to let folks know we are recording today's session. We'll make it available to you quite soon. And with that, Norman, I just want to say thanks to you for presenting today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's time, too.
Yeah, thanks to everyone in the audience. Appreciate the questions. And with that, we will conclude today's event.